The moment my sister said those words, the whole room felt smaller. "It's mine," she said quietly. Not loudly, not angrily, just calm, and somehow that made the words hurt even more. We were sitting in the living room of our childhood home, the same room where our mother used to read the newspaper every morning, the same room where we opened Christmas gifts and watched old movies together on quiet Sunday nights. The lawyer had just finished reading Mom's will. Outside the window, the afternoon sun was soft. Birds were moving slowly through the trees. It looked like a peaceful day, but inside that room, something fragile had just broken. I remember staring at my sister, my own sister, the girl who used to braid my hair before school, the girl who held my hand when we crossed busy streets as children. Now she was sitting across from me like a stranger. Her arms were folded. Her eyes were steady, and those 3 words were still hanging in the air. "It's mine." I felt a strange heaviness in my chest, not anger, not exactly. More like disbelief. Our mother had only been gone for 2 weeks. 2 weeks, and already we were talking about ownership, property, rooms, walls, the house where our lives had begun. I remember looking down at my hands. They were resting in my lap, trembling slightly. I tried to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come out, because deep inside, I knew something had changed forever. Not the house, not the will, but us, my sister and me. And in that moment, I realized something I never thought I would feel in my own family: loneliness. My name is Margaret. I'm 70 years old now, and if there's one thing life has taught me, it's this: families can love each other deeply and still hurt each other in ways no one expects. My sister's name is Eleanor. She is 2 years younger than me. When we were children, people used to say we looked like twins. Same brown hair, same soft eyes, same quiet smiles. Our mother used to laugh about it. "People will never be able to tell you apart," she would say. But the truth was, Eleanor and I were always a little different. I was the quiet one. I liked reading books and sitting near the window with a cup of tea. Eleanor was brighter, faster, the kind of person who walked into a room and filled it with energy. She had friends everywhere. Even as children, she spoke her mind easily. I admired that about her. And for most of our lives, we were close. Very close. Our father passed away when we were still young. Mom raised us alone in that small white house at the end of Maple Street. It wasn't a large house, but it was warm. The kitchen always smelled like cinnamon or fresh bread. Mom believed a home should feel alive. She kept flowers near the window, photographs on every shelf, and music playing softly on the radio. Some of my favorite memories are simple ones. Saturday mornings, the 3 of us sitting around the kitchen table. Mom pouring coffee, Eleanor telling long stories about school, and me listening quietly while sunlight filled the room. Those moments felt endless back then, like they would always be there. But life has a way of moving faster than we expect. Years passed. Eleanor married first. Her husband Richard was a practical man, very focused on work and money. They moved to another town about an hour away. I married a few years later. My husband Daniel was gentle and thoughtful. He loved gardening and old music records. We lived closer to Mom, so I visited her often, sometimes 3 or 4 times a week, not because I felt obligated, but because I enjoyed it. We would sit in the living room and talk. Sometimes we didn't even talk much, just shared the quiet. Eleanor visited too, of course, but less often. She had a busy life, a demanding job, children growing up. Mom never complained about that. She always defended Eleanor. "She has a lot on her plate," Mom would say, and she meant it kindly. That was our mother. She never measured love in hours or visits. She believed family meant patience and understanding. Looking back now, I realized something important. Those small years, those peaceful visits, those quiet afternoons with Mom, they were the real inheritance. Not the house, not the money, the time. But we didn't understand that yet. None of us did. Because the day the lawyer opened that envelope, everything changed. After the lawyer finished reading the will, the room stayed quiet for a long moment. The ticking of the wall clock sounded louder than usual. I remember staring at the photograph of our mother on the shelf. It had been taken 5 years earlier, on her birthday. She was sitting in the garden, smiling gently, her hands resting on the table beside a small cake. She looked peaceful in that picture, like someone who believed everything around her was still whole. The lawyer cleared his throat softly. "Well," he said carefully, "your mother left the house to both of you equally." His voice was polite, calm, professional. But the moment he finished speaking, Eleanor leaned forward slightly. Her expression changed. Not angry, just firm. "That's not what she told me," Eleanor said. The lawyer blinked, a little surprised. "What do you mean?" he asked. "She told me the house was mine," Eleanor replied. Her voice was steady, the kind of voice people use when they are sure they are right. I felt my stomach tighten. "Mom never told me that," I said quietly. Eleanor turned to look at me. "Well," she said, "she told me." The lawyer gently adjusted his glasses. "Legally," he explained, "the will clearly states the property is to be shared equally between both daughters." But Eleanor shook her head slowly. "That may be what the paper says," she said, "but I know what Mom wanted." Her husband, Richard, who had been sitting quietly beside her, finally spoke. "That house means a lot to Eleanor," he said. His tone was calm, but there was a firmness in it. "And Margaret has her own home already." I looked at him. I had known Richard for more than 30 years, but in that moment, I felt like I was seeing a different side of him. "I'm not asking to take the house," I said gently. "I just thought we would decide together." Eleanor sighed softly. "That's exactly the problem," she replied. "What problem?" I asked. "That everything has always been decided together," she said. Her words caught me off guard. For a moment, I didn't understand what she meant. But then she continued. "You were always here with Mom," she said. "You saw her all the time." Her voice wasn't angry, but there was something underneath it. Something old, something that had been waiting quietly for years. "I came when I could," she added. I felt a wave of sadness rise in my chest. "I never kept you away," I said softly. "I know that," she replied quickly. But she didn't look at me when she said it. The weeks after. In the weeks that followed, the subject of the house kept returning. Sometimes in small conversations, sometimes in quiet comments, sometimes in long, uncomfortable pauses. Eleanor began visiting the house more often. At first, I thought it was simply because she missed Mom. But slowly, I noticed something. She wasn't just visiting. She was planning. One afternoon, I arrived to find her standing in the living room with a notebook in her hand. She was measuring the walls. "What are you doing?" I asked gently. "Oh," she said casually, "just thinking about renovations." Renovations. The word felt strange in that house. "What kind of renovations?" I asked. "Well," she said, glancing around the room, "the place needs updating." I looked at the walls, the old curtains, the familiar furniture. It didn't feel outdated to me. It felt like home. "Mom liked it the way it was," I said quietly. Eleanor shrugged slightly. "Mom liked a lot of things that were old," she replied. Richard was standing near the doorway. "This place could be worth a lot more with some work," he said. That sentence lingered in the air. Worth more. Money. Value. I felt something shift inside me. Not anger. Just a growing realization. We were no longer talking about memories. We were talking about investment. A few days later, Eleanor invited me to sit down with her in the kitchen. The same kitchen where we used to eat pancakes on Saturday mornings. The table was empty now. No flowers. No fresh bread. Just 2 cups of coffee. "I've been thinking," Eleanor began. I waited quietly. The simplest solution is for me to keep the house, she said, and I'll give you half the value. Her voice sounded practical, like someone explaining a business arrangement. How would that work? I asked. We'd get it appraised, she said. Then I'd buy out your share. It sounded reasonable, at least on the surface, but something about it felt rushed. Maybe we should take some time first, I suggested. It's only been a few weeks. Eleanor leaned back in her chair. That's exactly why we should decide quickly, she said. Dragging it out will only make things harder. I studied her face. She looked determined, almost impatient. Do you really want to keep the house? I asked gently. Yes, she said immediately. Why? I asked. She paused. Then she said something that surprised me. Because I deserve it. The word deserve landed heavily between us. I looked down at my coffee cup. What makes you think that? I asked quietly. Eleanor folded her arms. Because I'm the one who always planned to come back here someday, she said. That confused me. You never mentioned that before, I said. Well, she replied, some plans don't need to be announced. I didn't argue, but something about her tone made my heart ache. Over the next few days, I began noticing small things in Eleanor's words. Little hints of resentment, little remarks that seemed to reach far into the past. You were always Mom's favorite, she said one afternoon while sorting through old photo albums. I looked up quickly. That's not true, I replied. She shrugged. It felt true. Her words caught me off guard. Our mother had always tried to treat us equally. But feelings are strange things. They don't always follow facts. Sometimes they grow quietly in the background for years, unspoken, unnoticed, until suddenly they appear in moments like this. I never wanted to take anything from you, I said softly. Eleanor closed the album. I know, she replied. But again, she avoided looking at me. The more we talked about the house, the more distant our conversations became. What used to be easy now felt careful, measured. Every sentence carried weight. One evening, as I stood in the hallway preparing to leave, Eleanor stopped me. Margaret, she said. I turned around. We need to settle this soon, she continued. I don't want this dragging on. Her voice was calm, but there was pressure behind it. I nodded slowly. I understand, I said. But deep inside, I felt something else growing. Not anger, not bitterness, just a quiet sadness. Because it was becoming clearer every day. The house wasn't the real issue anymore. Something deeper had opened between us, something that had been hidden for years. And sooner or later, it was going to come to the surface. For several weeks, the conversation about the house continued quietly. Not loud arguments, not shouting, just a slow pressure that seemed to sit between us every time we spoke. At first, we tried to keep things polite. We talked about practical things, the paperwork, the appraisal, the furniture. But underneath those conversations, there was something heavier, something neither of us wanted to say out loud. One afternoon, about a month after Mom passed away, Eleanor asked me to meet her at the house again. The sky was gray that day. Soft rain was falling against the windows when I arrived. The house felt unusually quiet. Even the familiar creak of the floorboards sounded different. Eleanor was sitting at the kitchen table with several papers spread out in front of her. Richard was beside her. A man I didn't recognize was sitting across from them. This is Mr. Dalton, Eleanor said. He's a real estate appraiser. I nodded politely. Hello, I said. Mr. Dalton smiled kindly. Nice to meet you. I took a seat at the table. The rain outside was tapping softly on the roof. Eleanor slid a document toward me. This is the appraisal report, she said. I glanced at the number on the page. The house was worth more than I expected. Much more. Eleanor folded her hands together. I can buy out your half, she said. I've already spoken to the bank. Her voice sounded prepared, like she had been rehearsing the sentence for days. I looked at her. You've already arranged the loan? I asked. Yes, she replied. Something about that moment made my chest tighten. She had moved forward quickly, very quickly. "Eleanor?" I said carefully. "I thought we were still discussing things." "We have been," she replied, "but there's nothing else to discuss." The room went quiet. The rain continued outside. Richard leaned forward slightly. "It's the most practical solution," he said. "You have your own home already." I nodded slowly. "Yes," I said, "but this house means something to me too." Eleanor sighed softly. "Margaret," she said, "it's just a house. Just a house." Those words echoed in my mind, because to me, it wasn't. It was where our mother had laughed, where our father had once stood in the doorway after long days at work, where Christmas mornings felt warm and safe. But Eleanor was looking at it differently now. To her, it had become something else, an asset, an opportunity. "I'm not refusing the idea," I said gently. "I just think we should take more time." That's when Eleanor's expression changed. The calm patience she had been holding suddenly disappeared. She leaned forward, her eyes steady. "Time for what?" she asked. "To process everything," I replied quietly. "It's been only a month since Mom passed." Eleanor shook her head. "That's exactly why we need to move on," she said. I felt my throat tighten. Move on. The phrase felt cold somehow. Richard tapped the paper lightly. "The bank approval won't stay open forever," he said. His tone was polite, but firm. I took a slow breath. "Eleanor," I said softly, "can I ask you something honestly?" She crossed her arms. "Of course." "Why does the house matter so much to you?" For a moment, she didn't answer. Then she said something that surprised me. "Because I've waited my whole life for something to finally be mine." The sentence hung in the air. I looked at her carefully. "What do you mean?" I asked. She laughed softly, but there was no warmth in it. "You had Mom," she said. I blinked in confusion. "What?" "You had her time," Eleanor continued. "You lived nearby. You visited every week. You were always here." Her voice was calm, but underneath it, I could hear years of something deeper. Resentment. "You were the good daughter," she said quietly. The words stunned me. "That's not true," I said quickly. But Eleanor shook her head. "You don't see it," she said, "but I always did." The rain outside grew heavier. The room felt smaller. "I never tried to take Mom away from you," I said gently. "I know," Eleanor replied, "but it happened anyway." Her eyes looked tired now, almost sad. "When I visited," she said slowly, "she would tell me about your dinners together, your shopping trips, your conversations." Her voice softened, and I would smile and listen. I felt a deep ache in my chest. "I thought you were happy," I said quietly. "I was," she replied, "but sometimes I also felt like a guest in my own family." The words hurt more than anything she had said before, because I had never imagined she felt that way. Not once. The room went silent again. Finally, Eleanor looked directly at me. "So yes," she said firmly, "the house matters." Her voice grew steady again. "And that's why I'm keeping it." I opened my mouth to respond, but she spoke first. Her voice calm, final. "It's mine." Those were the words. The moment that changed everything. Not because of the house, but because of what those words meant. For the first time in 70 years, my sister and I were standing on opposite sides of something we might never repair. And in that moment, I realized something quietly heartbreaking. The house we grew up in, the place where our family once felt whole, was now the thing slowly pulling us apart. After Eleanor said those words, the room felt very still. No one spoke for several seconds. The rain continued outside, steady and quiet, like a soft curtain falling over the afternoon. I looked down at the papers on the table, the numbers, the signatures, the neat lines waiting to be filled. All of it suddenly felt very distant, like something happening far away from where my heart actually was. "I think I should go home," I said quietly. Eleanor didn't respond right away. Richard gathered the papers slowly. stacking them into a neat pile. The appraiser had already left a few minutes earlier, sensing the tension in the room. Finally, Eleanor nodded. "If that's what you want," she said. Her voice sounded calm again, but something inside it felt closed, like a door that had gently but firmly been shut. I stood up from the table. For a moment, I looked around the kitchen. The same kitchen where our mother used to hum while washing dishes. The window where sunlight used to fall across the table every morning. So many memories were tied to that room. And suddenly they all felt fragile, like glass that might break if I held it too tightly. "I'll think about the offer," I said softly. Eleanor nodded again. That would be good. I picked up my coat from the chair near the door. As I walked through the hallway, I paused in front of the living room. Mom's old armchair was still there by the window. Her knitting basket sat beside it. A half-finished scarf still rested inside. For a moment, I could almost imagine her sitting there again, looking up with that gentle smile she always had. But the chair was empty. The house felt quiet, too quiet. I stepped outside into the soft rain, and for the first time since Mom passed away, I cried. Not loudly, just quietly in my car before driving home. After that afternoon, Eleanor and I spoke very little, not because we had decided to stop talking, but because neither of us seemed to know how to start again. Days passed, then weeks. Sometimes I would pick up the phone and think about calling her, but I would hesitate. What would I say? How do you begin a conversation when the last words you heard were, "It's mine"? Instead, I filled my time with small routines. Morning walks, tea in the afternoon, sorting through old photo albums. Daniel, my husband, tried to comfort me in quiet ways. One evening, he placed a gentle hand on mine. "You miss your sister," he said softly. I nodded. "Yes," I whispered. "Very much." He didn't offer advice. Daniel had always understood that some pains simply need time. About 6 weeks later, something unexpected happened. One afternoon, I received a phone call. It was Eleanor. I hadn't heard her voice since the day we argued. For a moment, I simply stared at the phone in my hand. Then I answered. "Hello?" "There was a pause on the other end, Margaret," she said. Her voice sounded different, quieter. "Yes," I replied. "I found something," she said slowly. "What kind of something?" I asked. "Something Mom left," she answered. My heart skipped slightly. "What do you mean?" "It's a letter," Eleanor said. "A letter for both of us." I felt a small wave of surprise. "A letter?" "Yes," she said. "I found it inside her desk drawer this morning." There was another pause. "I think we should read it together." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I said softly, "Okay." 2 days later, I returned to the house again. The same white house at the end of Maple Street. The rain had stopped. The air felt cool and calm. When I stepped inside, the familiar smell of the house greeted me again. Old wood, fresh air through the windows, and something else. Something comforting. Eleanor was already sitting in the living room. She held an envelope in her hands. It was old, slightly yellow at the edges. Mom's handwriting was on the front. Margaret and Eleanor. Seeing those words made my chest tighten. I sat down across from her. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, Eleanor said quietly, "I didn't know this existed." "Neither did I," I replied. She turned the envelope over slowly. I found it in the back of Mom's desk drawer. Her fingers traced the edge of the paper. I almost didn't see it. She looked up at me. "Do you want to read it?" she asked. I nodded gently. My hands trembled slightly as I took the letter. I opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a single folded sheet of paper. Mom's handwriting filled the page. Soft, familiar. I took a slow breath. Then I began to read. "My dear daughters," the letter began. "If you are reading this, it means I am no longer sitting in my favorite chair by the window." My voice trembled slightly as I continued. I know the two of you may have many decisions to make after I'm gone. That is normal. Life brings those moments. I paused for a second, gathering my breath. Eleanor watched quietly. But there is something more important than any house or object in this world. I looked up briefly at my sister, then continued reading. You are sisters, and that is a gift that lasts longer than anything I can leave behind. My throat tightened. I hope you will remember that the house on Maple Street was never meant to belong to one person. It was meant to belong to your memories. I saw Eleanor blink slowly. Her eyes were beginning to fill with tears. Mom's letter continued. If you ever find yourselves arguing about it, please stop and remember the real reason this home mattered. It was never the walls. It was the love inside them. I paused again. The room was very quiet. Even the clock seemed to have stopped ticking. Finally, I read the last line. My greatest wish is simple. Take care of each other. Love each other. That will always matter more than any house. I lowered the letter slowly. Neither of us spoke for a long time, because in that moment, we both understood something we had almost forgotten. The house had never been the real inheritance. We were. After I finished reading Mom's letter, the room stayed quiet for a long time. The words seemed to settle gently into the space around us. Eleanor looked down at her hands. I could see her shoulders rising and falling slowly as she breathed. For a moment, she looked like the little sister I remembered from childhood, not the woman sitting across from me during that argument weeks earlier. Just Eleanor, my sister. Finally, she spoke. I didn't know she wrote that, she said softly. Her voice was fragile, neither angry nor defensive, just tired. I think, she continued slowly, maybe I forgot what this house really meant. I folded the letter carefully and placed it back into the envelope. We both did, I said quietly. Eleanor looked up at me then. Her eyes were wet. I'm sorry, Margaret, she said. The apology came out almost like a whisper. I shouldn't have said it like that. I knew what she meant. Those 3 words. It's mine. I nodded gently. I know, I said. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I think I was carrying something for a long time, she admitted. What do you mean? I asked softly. She leaned back in the chair and stared at the window. I always thought you and Mom had something special that I didn't, she said. Her voice was quiet. I told myself it didn't matter, but sometimes it did. I listened carefully, because for the